want to make sure Ukraine wins and we don't have to involve NATO.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty dodgy, isn't it, being on the cusp of World War III? It's not good news, is it?
I'd rather we didn't go to World War III, especially when it's this thin. I mean, it's the pilot reckons, or the source is saying that the pilot misinterpreted the words, "you have the target," as permission to fire. And you would think that there is a definite permission to fire phrase.
So he missed...
Rather than "you have the target."
Yeah, but he's Russian, so he might not have understood the English phrase.
Is that what was happening?
That's probably what it was.
They should do the instructions in Russian, definitely.
That would be the solution.
That's a stupid thing they're doing.
They shouldn't have the English people telling the Russians whether they should shoot them or not. That's
exactly.
But there's also suggesting it was bad equipment, which, if Russia gets more equipment from North Korea, we're going to see a lot of this now. OK, well, that's all we've got time for in this section. But coming up is Keir Starmer, the next Ken doll, a big leak at the police, and Braverman's war on woke. See you in a minute.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Friday's newspapers. I'm still Andrew Doyle. I'm still here with Kerry Marks and Nick Dixon. And kicking off with the Daily Mail. Kerry, bad news for the police.
The Greater Manchester Police has been hacked as details of thousands of officers are stolen in huge cyber attack. They should call the police, really, shouldn't they? Get something done about it. So basically, this is not the first time this has happened, and it's come from a contractor. I never trust contractors anyway. I don't like tractors, and the word con doesn't help. And so what's been stolen is warrant card details. I don't know quite what that means. I mean, whether they now knock on a door and say, do you have a warrant? And everyone says, we've all got one now. But the details, apparently everything except their financial details, which is
that's good.
That's a bit of a relief, isn't it? And of course, most cops' details are known now, and if for no other reason than all those TikTok videos of someone confronting the police and showing how brave they are with the police, and then they're all filming police now and insisting they give their badge numbers and so on, which is fair enough. But Kerry, at the same time, there's not much secrecy left, really.
Why does it keep happening? I mean, you had this with the PSNI recently, where all their stuff got leaked. I know that was a mistake internally. This looks like this is an actual cyber attack. But you would have thought the police, of all people, would be the most secure.
And this is the second time. Also, it was the Metropolitan Police last time, and it was a near identical attack. Yes, we'd think the police would be the ones. I suppose they're going to say it's the contractors who've messed up here. But
Nick, any thoughts from you?
Loads, yeah. I mean, what are they after? Is it the warrant cards? I have no idea. I'm impressed though by this hacking because I can't get into half of my own account. No. You know what I mean? With this two-factor stuff now, you have to open your phone and type in a number, and yet they're getting into these police accounts. Very impressive. Although it's less impressive when it's anything government, because you kind of imagine it's sort of quite badly run. If they cracked into like Apple, I'd be really impressed. You know what I mean?
You shouldn't be impressed by hackers. It's sort of like you're inciting it. It's not glamorous.
I'm talking about the technical, the prowess. I'm not talking about the sort of ethos.
I think people are impressed by hackers, aren't they? The same as crimes like pickpockets, where we're impressed that they're good ones.
Well, because they're thinking of Matthew Broderick in War Games. They think it's him.
Remember that tacky movie from like 2000, The Hackers? And
I do remember that.
When you always try and like depict hacking on a film, it's the hardest thing to do. How do you show like, the hacking is happening?
Was that Robert Redford in that one?
No.
I
think it was Johnny Lee Miller, wasn't it?
I'm thinking of something else. Okay, we're going to move on now to The Guardian. Braverman hitting out against the civil service, Nick.
Yeah, Braverman to have Home Office diversity training vetted after woke claims. So every day on Headliners, we do a story about Suella Braverman trying to tackle wokeness in some sort of department. It's starting to feel like a sort of hostage message that she's sending out. I think she's just signalling for a future career. I don't like this stuff, by the way, but the hypocrisy of it, though, I was talking to Doug Stokes about this. He was claiming, he has a brilliant new book out, he was claiming that actually the Equality Act 2010 stops them doing anything about all these things. So actually they know they can't even fix these things, the Tory party. That's an interesting point. But to get onto the specifics of the story, if I can talk, it's to do with, they brought in all these measures after the Windrush scandal.
Yes.
That was bad PR for them. So Wendy Williams brought in these measures, bringing in pointless sort of diversity trainings, things like that. So now Suella Braverman wants to scrap them all again, and it just goes back and forth.
I wouldn't have thought that, because they're talking specifically about the introduction of critical race theory, which is a very sort of contemporary fad at the moment. I can't see how the Equality Act would mean that you would have to introduce these very contentious, divisive theories. I don't understand that.
Look, I think people are allowed to believe what they like, but it's like teaching religion in businesses and so on. Believe what you will. But I think when someone's done critical race theory, queer theory and so on, what we should be saying to them is, unlucky, you spent a long time learning gobbledygook rather than, you can now go around giving talks to companies and
people don't understand the difference,
how to understand it.
They don't get the difference between
theory and what difference? I mean,
no, because equality training and anti-racist training in the sense that they're talking about is like saying, we need to have, I suppose, more diversity, we need to stand up to racism. Critical race theory does the opposite. It creates more racial division, and people think it's the same thing. It's actually the opposite.
Well, look, how big a course do you really need to say, don't be racist or sexist?
You'd like to think they know that already, right?
By the colour of their skin, be nice to people. That's really a quite simple message.
You've just done it. You've just done the course.
I've just done it. I've saved companies an absolute fortune. Follow my system.
OK, the Daily Mail now. Keir Starmer. Is he the next Ken doll? Well, Ken's very dashing, isn't he, Kerry?
Do you find him dashing?
Well, it's Ryan Gosling, isn't it?
In the new film. Have you seen the film? I haven't seen the film.
I've seen the poster.
All right, OK.
So I feel like I've seen the film.
Did that do enough for you?
Yeah, that's all I need.
I like that he doesn't have male genitalia. That's the only plus from my perspective. Carry on.
Ryan Gosling doesn't have male genitalia.
Well,
in the film.
In the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's because he's Ken.
Fact now, so it doesn't work outside the film, does
there
it?
He is. Oh, no, that's Keir Starmer as Ken.
Oh, yeah, you can barely tell the difference.
So who's described him, Kerry?
All right, so Keir Starmer said that Rishi Sunak was Inaction Man. This is where it starts.
I see.
That's a fair sort of barb to do and so on. But then Penny Mordaunt has come back by describing Keir Starmer as being like the Ken doll and saying he has zero balls, which for me feels like a bit of a self-own when a woman is saying that a man has inaction because he has no balls.
I see.
Right, because therefore you're calling all
But also, isn't it
people
a compliment?
Are you not?
As well, it's a compliment because Ken's very attractive and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I think she's being very desperate to go, you've named something childish, and now I'm going to name something childish. And the main thing is she's really proud of this. She's really lent in. Beach Ken stands for nothing on shifting sands in his flip-flops, staring out to sea, doing nothing constructive to stop small boats or grow the economy. So she's really... What we're going to see next is Starmer and Sunak, or maybe just Labour and Conservatives, just calling each other by all kinds of children's games.
Is that the...
You're Slinky, you're Polly Pocket. Yeah, well, you're a yo-yo. Well, Cabbage Patch Kid has obviously gone, but Boris has left. But the whole thing just feels like... it's literally childish. This is where
Nick,
MPs are really dropping
is
to something.
this basically them trying to connect, politicians connecting with the electorate? They think that we understand children's toys, so they will understand these metaphors.
I think they've just all watched the Barbie movie. I mean, we saw Matt Hancock singing the Ken song, which was horrific.
Did we? I didn't see that.
I didn't see it.
He did it. Well, just I did then.
So it didn't
One
happen.
of us follows current affairs. So it was Matt Hancock on TikTok horrendously singing the "I'm Ken." I haven't seen the movie, but I've seen that. He's just going on, it's "I'm Ken" or whatever. This is his way to try and be seen as not a monster by the British public. Anyway, yeah, Morden is...
That's what a monster would do.
Yeah, exactly. Morden is citing, Starmer's weak record on union demands on border control, on protecting the public and stopping small boats. So Morden, I think what she's playing here is the "I've been in the Navy" or whatever it is card, where Starmer's weak and flip-floppy, which of course he is. It's not a hard target. Morden is famously woke as well, but I suppose on small boats, having been in the Navy, she can sort of play the boat card or something.
Isn't it quite... But it's quite shame, she's sort of buying into a patriarchal idea by saying if you've got no balls, you don't have any... courage, I suppose, is what's going on. It's not very feminist, is it?
I think it's a real My Little Pony of her.
There we go. There we go. It's also very offensive to eunuchs. Anyway, we're going to move on now to this next story, which is in the Telegraph from Italy. What's going on in Italy?
Yes, they go with "It's apocalyptic. Migrants fight over water as tiny Italian island overwhelmed by chaotic arrival scenes." And I'm sure many people have seen the video. This was Lampedusa, where 7,000 asylum seekers arrived. The population is 6,000.
So they more than doubled it.
It's extraordinary. It's a population of 6,000 and 7,000 arrived. I mean, imagine that. By my maths, and I have an English MA, so bear that in mind, that'd be like if 78 million people suddenly came into Britain. That's what I calculated before the show. It's probably wrong. But this is incredible. It's happening under Meloni, who, of course, tough on this sort of thing with her rhetoric. And people are pointing out she hasn't done anything. She's saying, no, we have to stop it at source. They're saying, no, you have to relocate, get the EU involved and relocate these people. She's saying, well, it's not about relocation, it's about stopping them. But obviously she's under pressure because people have been worried about the word invasion. When you take over, when you take the entire island, can we at that point say it's an invasion?
And that was within a 48-hour period. So all of a sudden, the 6,000 people that live there are just swamped with people, and most of them are young men. This is not good, is it, Kerry?
No, it'd be nice for the young men if it was swamped with young women. I think you'd hear far fewer complaints. No, look, this is just it's out of control, isn't it? I thought Meloni, the Prime Minister, being a member of a far-right party, was the person who was going to do something.
Is she far right? Has she been described as far right?
Yes.
A lot of the Italian press describes her as centro-destra, which is like centre-right. So I'm not totally sure. There are people much further right.
It's the way she's seen around the world. I thought she would find some dramatic way that probably we wouldn't agree with, but something.
Well, she says she's going to deal with it. No, but that's the point. Her rhetoric is all about being very tough.
But her rhetoric is it's got to be solved at source, which she might be right about. But then that means that she can't do anything.
Yeah, but you've got to do something. You can't just say something. I mean, that's the thing. She's talking about it.
She can't stop it as source, though, can she? She can't stop the boats leaving in the first place.
So, in other words, it's back to that question that it's not actually manageable by anyone.
Well, the answer is stop having wars and everyone stay home.
No, but there is no real answer because the African population is exploding, right? That's going to carry on in future. It's better to live in Europe, and then people have lost their fear of doing this, so this is just been more and more of it.
So this is the way it is. All right, then, well, that's it for part 2. Coming up, we have banned phones in school and more controversy with Hunter Biden. Can't wait.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again.
As we go through tonight and into tomorrow, we are going to see those strong winds in the north easing, allowing for a little bit of a chilly night for some of us. Meanwhile, some rain is going to push its way a little bit further northwards. That rain's being caused by this front, and you can see it's starting to feed a little bit further northwards as we go through the next day or so. Meanwhile, the deep low that's brought some windy weather to Scotland is pushing northwards as well, still bringing some strong winds to Shetland, but otherwise the winds are easing. As a result, we're going to see some low temperatures perhaps across northwestern parts of Scotland. Meanwhile, this front that I showed you earlier pushing into parts of southern Scotland, northern England, Northern Ireland, and so under this rain, temperatures not dropping a huge amount and also staying fairly warm across more southern areas. Friday then, a wet picture across southern Scotland, northern England and Northern Ireland. The rain's going to be quite persistent, and with some heavy bursts we could see those totals building up. A brighter picture further north, a few showers to watch out for here. Meanwhile, across central southern England and Wales, plenty of fine sunny weather to be had and temperatures getting into the mid-20s Celsius. Looking ahead to Saturday, and there may be some mist and fog patches to watch out for first thing, but these should quickly clear. Then there'll be plenty of dry, fine weather across the bulk of England and Wales, though watch out for a few showers developing later on. And notice that front that's been around for such a long period of time starting to break up, so turning drier across those northern areas. The risk of some heavy thunderstorms as we go into Sunday, with temperatures dropping early next week.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in their home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast, whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Friday's newspapers. We're going to kick this section off with The Guardian, and private schools want to opt out of GCSEs, and I'm sure a lot of students want to do that as well.
It's very convenient, isn't it? Private schools wanting to opt out of GCSEs, unable to produce the results. So Catherine Birbalsingh, who has the brilliant Michaela School, doesn't she? She's claiming that they just want to get out of it because they're not getting the grades.
Right.
So what they've done is gone full sort of hippie, and this guy from Latimer private school charges 24 grand a year, says, oh, GCSEs confine or stifle students' learning, which is kind of convenient way of getting out of it, and they want to offer their own private courses. And their thing is, look, GCSEs aren't setting students up for the modern world. Her thing is saying, no, you just want to wriggle out of it. And what's surprising to me is how far they've already, these private schools, replaced them with their own assessed courses. And Latimer and I think Bedales want to take it down to just English and maths.
So how's that going to work in the job market when you go out and they say, well, I don't have any GCSEs, but here I've got this thing that Latimer made up?
Well, you probably just got they'll probably just teach networking with posh people will be every
well, actually, that's probably the way to do it. I mean, this is an interesting one, Kerry, because, I mean, this guy from Latimer says GCSEs reward rote learning rather than deeper original thinking. I just think if only, I think that's what GCSE should be doing, that people should be able to memorise facts and figures and all the rest of it.
I really think, isn't it sort of when you get to A-levels, it's more about thinking and coming up with your own understanding?
Yeah, exactly.
GCSEs, I don't know, I'm really out of touch with the exams. It was this way you understand it more because it's very recent for you. But for me, I did...
Thank you.
I know, it was a compliment. I did O-levels, which were then GCEs, and then there was a CSE at the time, and then that went out somewhere back, I think, 80s or 90s or something, which I'm still back in that time.
Chimneys.
So I did, yeah. I've got and now what they're talking about is doing the private schools want to do IGCSE, which I think is the international
one. Yeah.
Which I don't know enough about this. I would have thought that makes sense anyway, doesn't it? To have an exam that's internationally recognised.
Well, you did O-levels. O-levels were meant to be much harder than GCSEs, from what I understand. That's what I've been told.
Everything's gone downhill.
Not to me, they weren't.
No, exactly, because you're a scholar.
Because everyone was smart back then. Now you have grade inflation. The thing is, it'll be a new posh flex. No, I don't even have any GCSEs. Like, you'll be boasting about how few GCSEs you have, because that'll mean you're ultra posh, and you only did 2 at your massively expensive school.
And Catherine Birbalsingh's point is that actually, because basically the other state schools are catching up, they're doing better, and the private schools don't want that. They want to keep their competitive edge, effectively.
Yes, but then they're making this claim that they think the other exams are more worthy, rather than say
sounds like
it's
PR.
because we're failing against the state schools.
All right, well, sticking with education now, the Telegraph has a way of improving children's education, and Kerry, this strikes me as obvious, frankly, but go on.
Yeah, all right, so this is the King's Old School. That's the King, by the way. They just put King's Old School, which I thought was an old school called King's, but no, Gordonston. So this is where Prince Charles went.
Yes.
And they're banning mobile phones during the day to protect children's brains, also just to protect the amount of noise and everything else that you get from that. But it's, as you say, I would have thought this would be a totally logical thing to do.
Why aren't they doing it already? I mean, surely they should be doing this anyway. Having kids with phones in the classroom?
Yes, but this is, I think, during break time as well.
Oh, is it?
And so... there's no need. I suppose you might argue, what if there's a Russian invasion or something? Yeah. We don't want to have phones with us, or what if there's a zombie attack? In America, it might be useful for kids to have mobile phones because of all the school shootings, so it'd be quite worrying if not. But if you want to find an adult at any one time, a mobile phone is very useful. There's no real need for a child to have a phone in school. You can always find them in an emergency.
Well, to go back to Catherine Birbalsingh's Michaela School, they take the phones off. They absolutely don't have phones in at all. They even have a digital detox where children actually submit their own phones to be locked in a cupboard for months so that they can focus and learn.
The kids or the phone gets locked in the cupboard?
The children do. It's very extreme. It's an extreme school. No, the phones. But, Nick, this is an odd... I wouldn't have thought that phones would be allowed anyway during the day. What would be the benefit of allowing kids to have phones during the day at school?
No, I can't see a benefit. And the fact that these elite schools are doing it suggests to me that this will be a new elite trait in the future. In a kind of idiocracy, the elite will be able to concentrate for about 10 minutes.
Yes.
And everyone else will manage about 10 seconds because they... Whenever I hear these stories about banning phones, it's always the poshest schools.
Yes.
But it's a good idea. I mean, I don't know how anyone does anything at school with phones. If we had them, we didn't have them. And just after we left, we got 32 10s. Just Snake alone would have brought my school to its knees. It would have failed nailed every Ofsted, just snake on the 3210 because it was so good.
It's literally academic, though, isn't it? I mean, we are going to have chips in our brains at some point. This is
God, I hope
this
not.
is for now. It's going to happen. There's no way it's not going to happen.
Elon Musk wants to do that, doesn't he?
Yes, well, he's saying that is going to happen, and I don't agree with him on a whole lot of things, but unquestionably, when the first person gets one, we're all going to start needing one.
Oh, horrible thought. Anyway, The Independent now, and workers have it too good these days, Nick.
Yeah, millionaire CEO wants unemployment to jump to 50% because workers have become arrogant. And almost inevitably, this guy's Australian. It just feels like an Australian thing to say. It's a sort of tough love. It's Tim Gurner. And he said that workers became arrogant during COVID and decided they didn't want to work so much. And he says we need to see pain in the economy. He sounds like Leo Kearse.
Wow.
This is really tough stuff. And,
does he mean arrogant or lazy?
He means they become lazy. When you look into it, what it is this, Andrew. He's got a 6.4 billion property portfolio, and so he's sick of construction workers being lazy. Imagine, you know how it's hard to get a builder or get anything fixed and it takes ages. Imagine you've got 6 billion worth of properties and you've got millions of builders just being really annoying. That's what's happened here. And the other point is he's saying that now employees feel like the employer is extremely lucky to have them as opposed to the other way around. But that's simply supply and demand. I don't know about Australia, but in the UK, we have a surplus of jobs, so we need people to actually fill them. So, of course, it is that way around. That's the market.
Thoughts on this, Kerry?
It's a bit of a non-story, really. The man said something extremely unpopular with the entire world.
Yes.
There's not one person agreeing with him, and anyone who does agree with him isn't going to say they do anyway, because no one's that stupid as to say a thing like this apart from him. Look, this is caricature, cartoon-level capitalism, isn't it? It's like, it's silly, over the top. He's the same guy who said in 2017 he told millennials to stop buying smashed avocados if they wanted to be able to afford
it was that guy.
Is this guy.
That is good advice.
Well,
why are they buying smashed avocados? They could be buying a house with that money,
I
Kerry.
don't like avocados, and I've never even bought any avocados, so it doesn't work.
Well, let alone a smashed one. Ridiculous. OK, we're going to move on to the Daily Mail now. Could Britain's ageing population give us a silver lining? Kerry, what's going on here?
OK, this is the headline is falling population could make Brits richer in the coming decades. Despite warnings, more immigration is needed to balance the ageing population. So it sounds like quite a complicated story. The warnings we're hearing from experts is that immigration is needed to have more young people in the country because we have this ageing population. We need to counterbalance that in order to pay for pensions and so on.
And we can't look after them, basically.
Right, but what the researcher, Professor David Miles of the Office of Budget Responsibility, I believe, is that right? The OBR?
Yes.
Yeah. The watchdog is saying that this doesn't account for the costs of infrastructure.
OK.
So if you have a lower population, if a lot of the population die, then the infrastructure costs are considerably less, and therefore overall everyone benefits from it. So these warnings aren't necessarily true. So basically, the best thing we can do for a good future is to reduce the population.
What are you implying here?
I'm implying that we do things like get rid of the mind the gap sign. You know, things like that. That sign that says...
subtle things that might prune...
We've stopped this window opening too far. Darwinism.
Darwinism.
This is very right-wing of you, Kerry.
No, actually, I don't think so. I think, and also, the other thing we could do is get rid of pills and condoms so people have more babies, and then we don't need loads of immigrants.
Nick, what do we do?
Yeah, the part I agree on is that immigration doesn't work. Like experts like Paul Morland have said, immigration's a short-term fix for the population problem. It doesn't actually work for various reasons. And he cites some of them in this. But what people normally then say is we need to increase our birth rates with the extant population.
Yes.
But where he differs, because people like Musk, as Elon Musk famously is saying, we've got terribly low birth rates and we're not going to be able to man our own infrastructure. Whereas the difference here is he's arguing we can have a reduced population because the higher the population growth, the less your ability to maintain assets per person unless you raise savings, but that means lower consumption. So he's saying we'll just have a better quality of life and we'll have with fewer people. But I've never heard this one before, so it is interesting because most people think, no, we need the people to man the infrastructure.
Why don't we just have more babies?
Well, that's the idea, but the question is how do you incentivise that? It's been the big problem.
You make everything more erotic. And you make everyone more aroused.
I have
and then
to
you'll
remind
get more
you
babies.
Babies are the worst form of migrants. They come into the country through tunnels. They don't speak the language. They spend 12 years just learning how to stack a shelf.
Very good point.
Have you seen their fashions? They don't care.
Very good point, Kerry. We're going to move on to this one. American news from The Telegraph. I do suspect, Nick, there might be a degree of schadenfreude here.
Well, yeah, look, it's Hunter Biden faces 3 charges related to gun possession while using drugs. It's classic, not just gun possession, but gun possession while using drugs.
He never does things by halves.
No, it's so Hunter. But of course, you know, one suspects he'll still get away with things. You know, David Wise, who's the guy they've hired, is said to be a kind of Biden stooge. And, you know, you imagine how Trump is treated over paperwork. And look at the kind of things Hunter Biden's alleged to have done. I still think he'll be treated softly, but it is interesting that something is happening.
But they tried to stop it, didn't they? They didn't want this to happen.
The interesting thing, though, actually, is well, 2 interesting things. One, how would this have affected the 2020 election if we'd known more about Biden, and then especially the links with the big guy, meaning Joe Biden. But then 2, is this actually better for the Democrats now? They're trying to get. Some people think they're trying to get rid of Biden.
Yes.
So is this kind of thing actually more useful for them? Is another angle.
Mind you, I mean, maybe Joe could just pardon him, couldn't he? Isn't he allowed to do that?
I don't know whether he'd get away with pardoning his own son.
No.
I would have thought that might be pushing it a fair bit. It's interesting that. I mean, he could end up doing 10 years as a maximum penalty for... And it's not for taking drugs while buying a gun. It's for lying that he hadn't.
Oh.
Right? So it's for the false statement,
I see.
which he's mostly in trouble. I don't know if you saw Biden last October claimed that his son did nothing wrong. And in the statement, he's erming and erring, faltering and stammering, which he does all the time anyway. So it's a good technique to tell. You can't tell whether someone's feeling guilty or not.
Absolutely. Well, coming up, we're finally going to know the truth about aliens, also what other cultures think of love, and a man who thinks he's a dog goes on the hunt for a lassie. See you in a minute.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Friday's newspapers. We're going to kick off this last section with our favourite subject, aliens. Kerry.
Is that our favourite subject?
Well, it's my favourite subject.
What's your favourite? NASA has published findings of a long-awaited study on UFOs today, except they're no longer called UFOs. We have changed the name to unidentified anomalous phenomena.
It'll never catch on.
It won't catch on because UFO sounds a lot cooler, and UAP. Sorry, UAP doesn't really work.
Doesn't work.
But I suppose UFO has other connotations which were offensive to aliens, so they had to change it at some point or other. And the panel who have been... Basically, the idea is to have more transparency. This is big news, and it's not much news as well, because there's nothing really new in it. And the piece of film they've been putting out, some of them they've looked into. The panel looked into the one, which I don't know if you've seen this one, the US Navy UFO video, which I don't think we've got that, so I'll just sort of mime it out.
Yeah, that's scarily accurate.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a UFO. I mean, they've said there's no evidence of any... I mean, they've looked at a lot, like more than 800 cases, no evidence. I think surely that means there aren't any.
It's also, we've got to realise that people seem to think that if a pilot saw something, then he's a pilot, he must know the difference between every single phenomenon. But of course they don't. You can see optical illusions when driving, when walking.
And they're going really fast.
So it doesn't mean we shouldn't be looking into it. I mean, it's interesting to throw it to the public and say, look, but I'm not sure. The idea is giving all this info to the public will help create some clarity and make them feel involved. But the trouble is, I don't think the public are always the best people to give information to.
Well, no, I mean, they panic, don't they, Nick? I mean, do you really think there are little green men?
Well, I'm torn, because sometimes I think it's an anti-Christian conspiracy theory, but I also sometimes think they are real. People like Bob Lazar spoke very convincingly about his time working on UFO craft. There's a whole documentary about it. It's extraordinarily convincing. And then, when they started to look into it, I thought, why are the government looking into it? Then I started to doubt it, because I don't trust any government. But now what I've realised is, here's what they're doing, Andrew. They're doing a kind of nonsense inquiry. You know, like the COVID inquiry. You know, when the government has an inquiry into itself, and you're like, whatever. I think it's that kind of thing. They're now having a sort of... They thought, OK, there's too much pressure to work out what UFOs are, to acknowledge to the public they exist. So we'll have a kind of fake inquiry, and we'll dismiss it like, oh, it's a balloon, and all this kind of stuff they're saying, you know, and they're like, oh, it's a weather balloon, all this kind of thing. And now that makes me think that's what's going on. It's a fake inquiry.
OK.
I'm claiming.
Well, that's...
No evidence.
No evidence, as usual, from Nick Dixon. We're going to move on to the Times now. Some cultures don't understand love, apparently.
Yes, people from different cultures struggle to recognise love songs, and this is kind of a silly article. It's a non-story, OK? It's a bit of a non-story, because they're saying they can recognise dance music, right, and lullabies, but they can't recognise love songs. Because obviously, because dance music you can recognise from the rhythm, and lullaby sounds all soothing, the melodies and the choice of notes. Obviously, for the love song, it could be anything. It's just lyrically...
It's the lyrics?
Yeah.
Unless it's a power ballad, and you know it's about love.
That's definitely a love song. All Spanish love songs have corazon. That's about as far as I go.
So different countries have trouble with... But is love... Are there some cultures that don't have love?
Yeah, in the north. In the north, we don't.
I'm pretty sure every country has love.
It's too cold where I'm from to have it.
Yeah,
I was at the same instant conclusion as you there. It's like they're treating love as if it's a genre of song. But of course, you can have dance music that's a love song, but they're actually then reaching conclusions. Our minds have evolved to listen to music. It's not a recent invention. We look at dance songs; they require coordination. So they're coming. I'm not going to read this whole thing. They're coming up with reasons why people would recognise a lullaby. A lullaby has an action; it puts you to sleep.
Yeah.
You know, dance music, you want to dance to it. A love song could be absolutely anything.
They must be really confused by that.
Logic to it.
That Public Image Limited song that was called This Is Not a Love Song, wasn't it? And it was also kind of sound like a dance song. And he said it wasn't a love song, but it was a love song. They'd be lost.
I mean, this is just a silly article, let's be honest. So we're going to move on to this one in the iTrans news now, and I mean trans-species news.
Yes, I mean, after that ridiculous story, we need something sensible.
Don't we? Don't we just? What's going on here?
This is... I'm going to get through this without using the term barking mad, which is difficult. This man spent £12,000 becoming a human collie. He now wants to find a lassie to love.
There he is.
This guy again.
So he wants a girlfriend. He wants another dog, a dog woman, basically.
They're a bit small for him, those two.
Yeah.
So there's lots of discussion about whether it's OK to do dog face or not. And he's a therian, which I didn't know the expression before. It's someone who's born as a human but identifies as a non-human. And he's looking for love. He wants someone who they can poodle their earnings together.
If he wants love, he needs to stop dressing as a dog.
They can know each other by sweet human owner names.
This is like our 8th story on this freak. I'm sick of this guy. He's saying he wants to be in a movie as a dog, but he can barely move in the costume. The other thing that was ridiculous, he said, I rarely tell my friends because I'm afraid afraid they'll think I'm weird. Nah.
I love the fact this is a good old-fashioned, just crazy guy story, though, isn't it?
I know.
It's not one of these animal stories of we all have to be doing it or changing
No,
the
it's a crazy
language
guy.
for it.
But I think Nick's annoyed because he's constantly on GB News.
Yeah, he's on headliners every other night.
He's also a shareholder.
Well, why
of the
shouldn't
company.
he be?
Yeah. No, God love him. God love him. We're going to move on now to, I think we've got time for one more story. This is The Telegraph. Nudity, that's your favourite subject,
Yes,
Nick.
naked ambition. Naturists hope nude comedy and sports can sell lifestyle to younger people. This is the Young British Naturism Group. They're 18 to 35. They want to do naked comedy and volleyball events. Imagine the logistics of that. Just think about that for a second.
No, we don't have much
volleyball.
time. In fact, I want to cut you off because this has made me feel slightly ill. But there we go. We're going to end this show by looking at the front covers of Friday's newspapers. We've got the Mail first. They're leading with "Even in grief, we are banned from saying her name." The Telegraph is running with "Pupils to isolate for 21 days as measles cases rise." That's 160,000 cases in London, apparently. We covered that earlier. The Guardian has Starmer criticised by left and right over plan to end small boats crisis. The Daily Express is running with "A dirty deal." Apparently, Suella Braverman is slamming Labour's EU migrant plan. No real surprise there. The Daily Mail with this story about HS2. Tories' £106 billion HS2 shambles. The final betrayal, they're calling it. And the Daily Star, seconds away from World War III. Dramatic from the Daily Star there. So all we've got time for. Thanks to my guests, Carey and Nick. We're back tomorrow at 11 o'clock. And by the way, if you're here watching the breakfast repeat, stick around because it's time for breakfast right now.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again. As we go through tonight and into tomorrow, we are going to see those strong winds in the north easing, allowing for a little bit of a chilly night for some of us. Meanwhile, some rain is going to push its way a little bit further northwards. That rain's being caused by this front, and you can see it's starting to feed a little bit further northwards as we go through the next day or so. Meanwhile, the deep low that's brought some windy weather to Scotland is pushing northwards as well, still bringing some strong winds to Shetland, but otherwise the winds are easing. As a result, we're going to see some low temperatures perhaps across northwestern parts of Scotland. Meanwhile, this front that I showed you earlier pushing into parts of southern Scotland, northern England, Northern Ireland, and so under this rain, temperatures not dropping a huge amount and also staying fairly warm across more southern areas. Friday then, a wet picture across southern Scotland, northern England and Northern Ireland. The rain's going to be quite persistent, and with some heavy bursts we could see those totals building up. A brighter picture further north, a few showers to watch out for here. Meanwhile, across central southern England and Wales, plenty of fine sunny weather to be had and temperatures getting into the mid-20s Celsius. Looking ahead to Saturday, and there may be some mist and fog patches to watch out for first thing, but these should quickly clear. Then there'll be plenty of dry, fine weather across the bulk of England and Wales, though watch out for a few showers developing later on. And notice that front that's been around for such a long period of time starting to break up, so turning drier across those northern areas. The risk of some heavy thunderstorms as we go into Sunday, with temperatures dropping early next week.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.